Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Solo React Talk. This evening, I'm going to be reacting to the murder of Sitting Bull, Native American History, Part 4. Sorry, made on Extra History YouTube channel. Yes. If you guys want to check out my previous reaction to the other parts as well as other extra history videos, remember that the extra history reaction playlist card is going to be at the top right here. You'll be able to access them there. And if you want to check out the original video as well as Extra History's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Yes, I have a new pen. I have a new pen. It's got some black and gold on it, and it looks so nice. Look at that. I'm going to enjoy writing with this pen. Really, I am going to enjoy it. I'm digressing. Let's start. Let's start with the murder of Sitting Bull. 3, 2, 1, go.
Sitting Bull sits in a fort with the U.S. Army officers, telling them that he is done living in exile. Canada has been hard. His followers are hungry and ill. 3/4 are women and children. And he himself has developed an eye condition so severe, he must protect them with green-tinted goggles.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Is it some sort of cataracts, maybe? I'm not sure.
He then tells the officers that he has brought his grandson with him and wishes for the boy to be educated in the ways of white Americans. He hands his Winchester to the boy to surrender to the soldiers. "I wish it to be remembered," he says, "that I was the last man of my tribe to surrender my rifle." But Sitting Bull has not surrendered entirely. Not truly. Not in his heart. Thanks so much to Factor for keeping us history-loving beans well-fed fast. In the chaos after Little Bighorn, Sitting Bull's coalition of Plains tribes basically broke. Many, some who had just joined the group to hunt and had not meant to enter a battle, went back to the reservations, again appealing to the agencies for support. Others broke off in their own bands.
And many of those tribes that joined Sitting Bull, once they dispersed and returned back to the reservations or wherever they went, they were hunted down. They were either arrested or killed. And essentially, the military structure of this campaign against Custer has been neutralized. So, even if Sitting Bull wants to carry his gun once more and fight against the Americans, I don't know if he'll have the same sort of power and military might that he had previously in the next conflict that might occur. Because I think Crazy Horse is dead, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was killed. And yeah, I think even the American government is going to try and make sure that the Native Americans don't just go from reservation to reservation and gathering up their force for an assault or defense over particular land or people or whatever it might be. I think they will be surveilling them far more closer.
Was in fact logistically impossible for the buffalo hunting lifestyle to keep such a large group supplied and fed, especially with herds dwindling. So it was only a few hundred that crossed the border with Sitting Bull into Canada, where they starved for 2 years. Now, the Canadian government was not hostile to them overall. In fact, Sitting Bull felt he had better relations with Canadian officials and even gifted one his war bonnet. But because the Canadian government said they were not based in Canada and were occupying territory set out for Canadian-based tribes, it would not issue them food or supplies. And even that far north, the buffalo still dwindled.
I mean, the buffalo population has been severely decimated in North America. Due to overhunting and the erosion of their environment, where they graze for grass and have children. All of that has been cut up into pieces, into properties, into land that is owned either by the American government or the Canadian government, and all of this demarcation of vast tracts of land have disrupted the migration of buffalo across North America. So not only are they suffering through population disruptions, but also migrating disruptions. And this has also affected the Native American communities. The tribes are severely affected by this. Because just like the buffalo, they are also being, squeezed into small reservations. Their patterns of surviving on the land have been disrupted. They are now being put in a fixed position, and in that fixed position, they have to now depend on the government for food and for other amenities. When in the past they could just roam around, vast tracts of land without being impeded by anyone. They would follow the buffalo, they would hunt the buffalo and consume the buffalo head to toe. And all of that has been lost. And that is why, even the Lakota clan of Sitting Bull, they are struggling in Canada because that land has been demarcated. That this belongs to this tribe and the rest of the land belongs to the Canadian government. And the same thing is happening in America as well.
So eventually, he returned and surrendered. Or rather, he appeared to surrender. He handed his rifle to his grandson, who then surrendered it. And that wasn't lost on his followers. Sitting Bull would try this path, but was keeping his options open. Afterwards, he boarded a riverboat, the first time he'd ridden one rather than shot at it, and visited his first major American town. The citizens of which, upon seeing the man who killed Custer, the leader of the resistance against the U.S. cavalry, promptly threw him a huge party. Oh yeah.
A party? Okay.
Yeah, because after Little Bighorn, everybody had become kind of obsessed with Sitting Bull. And I mean everyone. Biographies of him were published in both England and France, and American journalists chased every rumor that would explain his victory over U.S. forces. The myth that they settled on was that Sitting Bull was not culturally Lakota at all, but rather raised among white Americans, was university educated, and graduated from West Point. So
why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they lie about Sitting Bull's origins and make it seem as if he was brought up amongst the Europeans, the European settlers, or what is it now, Americans, white Americans? Why would they say such things? He is a Lakota. He is born of Lakota. He has been taught by the Lakota. He is Lakota. Are they ashamed? Are they ashamed that they were defeated by a native? Is that why they're doing this? Because it doesn't make any sense. Why would they say such things?
supposedly, he'd even studied in France and was a devotee of Napoleon.
When? When did that happen? Please. Please. Oh gosh. The lies.
In fact, a book of poetry and letters, the Works of Sitting Bull, was falsified and entered into the Library of Congress. It suggested he not only spoke English, but also Greek, Latin, Spanish, French, Italian, and German.
Wow. They really want to make sure that he has no connection with the Lakota, that it only takes a white man or someone who has learned the culture of a white man to defeat another white man. It can't be someone who's a native.
This narrative was actually soothing for the American public, believe it or not. Because think about it. If Sitting Bull was a university-educated proponent of Western tactics, it meant that the American public didn't have to reckon with the fact that the 7th Cavalry had been absolutely bodied by a native warrior that they considered racially and intellectually inferior.
You hear that? You hear that?
The worthier a foe Sitting Bull seemed, the better the U.S. Army and its dead hero Custer could appear. On his way to government confinement, he signed autographs for $1 apiece, he had been taught to sign his name in Canada, and sold personal items to souvenir collectors, though he never kept the money for himself, mind you, always using it to support the Hunk Papa band that remained with him. For the next 2 years of confinement in government custody, living in various times at the Standing Rock Reservation and Fort Randall, Sitting Bull would receive letters from as far away as Europe, as well as visitors from the Hunkpapa and other tribes. Photographers also came to take his portrait and interview him, but
I understand, him communicating with other Native American tribes, but then letters all the way from Europe, what are they telling him? Well, exactly why are they sending him messages? Like, I don't get that part. Do they find him as a celebrity? Do they understand why Sitting Bull was fighting? Do any of them appreciate why he was fighting? For what he was fighting for? Who was he fighting for? All of the pain and suffering of his people and the Native American communities and tribes. They don't care about any of that. They just want this entertainment, because that's how now they are positioning Sitting Bull. They're sidestepping why this man was fighting and why he and the Plains tribes, yes, the Plains tribes were fighting against the American government and Custer, and the fact that they defeated Custer and his forces. And they're just making Sitting Bull as some sort of entertainment spectacle. That here is a native that we have captured that has done what seemed to be impossible. A barbarian, a native, defeating a European settler. That's impossible in their eyes. But you know what? Get that money, Sitting Bull. Get that money from these people who are giving you $1, $2, $3. Get all this money and give it to your clan or your tribe, because where they are staying, I don't know where they're staying exactly, whether it's in a reservation camp as well. I'm sure there isn't enough amenities. I don't think the government is giving them enough amenities to survive. So if you can collect all this money and you can give it over to your people, maybe they'll have a better chance at surviving through the hard times. Yeah.
Then other letters arrived also, letters asking him to go Wild Westing. See, as the Indian Wars wrapped up, those living in the large cities of the East Coast and Midwest wanted to experience both the conflict and the already disappearing lifestyle of the pioneer era. But, not truly. They
want a theme park. They want a theme park. They want to be, gallant heroes or barbarians. They want to be in an entertainment value experience. They don't want to think about the fact that so many people died, that land was taken, that cultures were destroyed, that people were subjugated. They don't want to know about any of that stuff. No, they want to have that heroic experience.
Wanted a window into a world that cast the native people whom they'd fought as noble savages that were part of a vanishing race, and European forces as the embodiment of progress.
Right.
This way of thinking was essentially a victory celebration meant to glamorize, sanitize, and legitimize the bloody and morally complex process of manifest destiny, because in their eyes it turned an act of conquest into an act of charity.
Charity. Destroying a way of life, destroying the very land on which they live on, and you say that is charity. Oh.
Also presenting naked entertainment as educational, and the most successful impresario of
Buffalo Bill Cody. Okay.
this form was the former scout and bison hunter, Buffalo Bill Cody, who began trying to put a show together exhibiting Sitting Bull almost the second he arrived at Standing Rock. However, it was actually
James McLaughlin. Oh, okay.
Sitting Bull's own Indian agent, James McLaughlin, the man
Oh, McLaughlin.
who was supposed to oversee his custody, welfare, and rehabilitation, who began exhibiting him on stage for the first time in major Western cities.
Exhibiting him like it's some sort of war trophy or a toy. Something for the public to gawk at. That this is the man, the barbarian, the native that killed Custer and his forces. When in actual fact he didn't actually lead the forces. You know, he was performing his Sundance so that he could gaze into what needed to be done for his people to gain victory. It was Crazy Horse who led the charge with the entire force, while Sitting Bull retreated with his people.
And it was during these tours
Annie Oakley.
that Sitting Bull first met Annie Oakley, the petite ambidextrous trick shooter who would thrill audiences with her ability to blast a cigarette out of her father's lips or hit targets from long distances. Sitting Bull took a shine to Oakley immediately, believing her skills indicated great spiritual power, nicknaming her Little Sure Shot.
Oh, right. Little short shot. Okay.
A name she'd monetize in her show career long afterward, he symbolically adopted her as a sign of favor. Though eventually, relations with McLaughlin, who was, to be clear, corruptly exploiting a prisoner, soured, and he managed to later get permission to travel with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. His salary there would be $50 a week, and he'd retain the rights to sell his autograph, photo, and memorabilia. And what would he do in this new show? Nothing. When the show set up in a new city, he would ride into the arena in a carriage at the head of the procession, and then sit in a VIP spot on the grandstand and watch the proceedings. He was literally just there to be looked at, and that was enough.
Yeah, you're a war trophy. You're a gimmick for all these spectators to look upon. And for them to talk to you and to ask for autographs, and it's all just entertainment for these people. They don't really care about the Native Americans and what they're going through. I wonder if Sitting Bull even asked them, like, do you know who I am? Do you know where I come from? Do you know why I was fighting? Do you know who I was fighting against? Can you petition to your government to allow our people to have our freedom? I'm sure if Sitting Bull even asked them that, they would be laughing like, that nervous laugh, that they wouldn't really acknowledge the plight that his people are going through.
There, he watched staged scenes of native warriors attacking a pioneer cabin and fort, and even a recreation of the Battle of Little Bighorn, all of which the settlers and army won, of course.
Of course.
But to Sitting Bull, this was worth it. For while the show ostensibly let Americans learn about the Plains tribes, Sitting Bull himself was also learning about the culture and power of the government that he'd been fighting. The cities of the East Coast were massive, their populations teeming, and new people were getting off the boat from Europe every day. His people had not been fighting one nation, he realized, but rather a nation that was importing settlers and soldiers from other nations. And he was shocked and upset by the poverty of these cities. Generosity, one of the 4 virtues of the Lakota warrior, meant that even if a family was poor, it never had to beg. Yet here, he was followed by shoeless children, who learned that the kind chief would give them coins. Once, he stopped in front of a woman begging, and having no money, on the spot sold 3 of his signatures and placed all $3 in her hands. So if he'd wanted to learn about the United States, he was successful. But one of his other aspirations did fall flat. He wanted to meet President Grover Cleveland and plead the Lakota's case, but the audience was brief and he barely got to speak before Cleveland was swept along to another meeting. Nothing would come of it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. They don't see you as a threat anymore, and you know, they don't need to take you seriously. They don't need to take the Native Americans seriously. They have made sure that they would corner them into small little boxes where they could be controlled, and they've neutralized any sort of resistance that you might try to muster up. And it's sad, you know. It's just sad. Here he is in front of the president, and the president is not interested in talking to a native. And that's why I'm saying, if Sitting Bull talked to these people who supposedly love him or who are interested in him, if he talked to these people and told them about what's going on in his life and the life of his people, how would they respond? What would they do? Would they petition to their political representatives to take a closer look into this matter? Would they campaign directly to the president and to insist that the president does something about the situation about the Native Americans and giving them their territory, their freedom, their right to exist as a people, as a culture? Would these people who are gawking and spectating Sitting Bull ever come to his defense and to his people's defense? No. Because they just saw him as a source of entertainment. They saw him as a source of entertainment, and for their fallacy of heroic, stories and gallant saviors of mankind against barbarity.
Sitting Bull, disappointed and dejected, decided to go back to Standing Rock. With him, he brought a gift from Buffalo Bill, an enormous white horse from his show that had been trained to dance at the sound of gunfire. And this was a fitting gift.
Ghost dance.
Since a new movement called the Ghost Dance was sweeping the depleted native populations of the Great Plains. Now, the Ghost Dance is difficult to explain, since the religion of the Plains tribes is based on personal interpretations of spiritual experiences, so it may have meant different things to different practitioners. But put simply, it was an attempt to use ritual dance and prayer to restore the world to how it had been before European colonization of the Americas. See, nothing in Lakota religion was ever really destroyed. The herds of buffalo, the plants, and the many, many dead family members all still existed inside of the earth from where they'd originally emerged. It was believed that should the Plains tribes join the dance, the buffalo and dead would return, and the whites would go back to Europe.
Yeah. I wish that really happened, but no. No. I believe that when it is your time to go, when you reach the afterlife, you will see them again. You will see your family members, you will see your ancestors, you will see your land, the buffalo, everything that you have ever wished for and hoped for your people. You will see it all again, not in this life, but in the next one. Yeah.
Its core, it was a non-violent movement, a thing to do now that armed resistance had failed. But the increased gatherings of Plains tribespeople performing the dance on reservations appeared to Indian agents and government officials like a brewing rebellion. After all, most dances, such as the Sun Dance, had already been banned on reservations in the 1880s, so participation was an act of spiritual resistance.
Why didn't James just ask them, what is this dance? What is it for? Oh, but you know what? Even if he did ask them that and they explained it to him, he would still see it as a threat. 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 He would still see it as a You would still see it as a threat.
Newspapers around the country, many based on erroneous or even fabricated reports, said that the reservations were full of violent revolts. And the one question on everyone's mind in 1890, when the first dances were held at Standing Rock, was, would Sitting Bull be joining the dance? It was unclear whether Sitting Bull believed in the ghost dance, though he was a very spiritual man and appeared to have at least respected it as a movement. In fact, while he never voiced support, when the dance came, he did join. And that was enough for McLaughlin. For years, he'd been writing letters calling Sitting Bull stubborn, rebellious, and criticizing how he refused to learn to farm. So he sent 2 native policemen to arrest Sitting Bull just in case of an uprising.
Native policemen.
But when they reached his house, Sitting Bull, true to his name, refused to get up. When they forced him, a Lakota man shot one of the policemen, who then fired a shot through Sitting Bull's chest, with a second fired into his head. Sitting Bull lies on the ground. Above him is the open sky, and the faces of his people looking down. He's bleeding, exhausted, in excruciating pain. For nearly 3 decades, he has resisted the U.S. government, handing it its greatest defeat in the Indian Wars, and forcing it to examine its own character, giving all to his people until there was no more left to give. Within a day, his followers, panicked, will flee to join a Cheyenne party who had already decided to move to the Pine Ridge Reservation and the shelter of Red Cloud. Instead, they will be massacred by the vengeful 7th Cavalry at Wounded Knee. But that is still in the future. Right now, Sitting Bull's eyes close, and nearby, a towering white stallion hears the shots that killed him and begins to dance. Now, I'm not gonna lie here, the end of this series kind of hit me like a truck. I think you can actually hear it a little bit in my voice in those last few sentences, but something that always does lift my spirits a little bit in these moments is that we have sponsors like the folks over at Factor who believe in supporting the important historical stories we feel need to be told. Very thankful for that. Factor, of course, being the best ready-to-eat meal delivery service that I've been using for over a year and a half now for great tasting breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. Each of their meals is ready in just 2 minutes with no prep, no mess, and best of all, no cleanup. Just great food ready when I have time to eat it. It's awesome. Every week, I review Factor's rotating menu and pick what I'm feeling from their tons of tasty meals and add-on options. Like, for instance, their cold-pressed juices, which are great, or their protein shakes, which I just tried out, or their great wellness shots, or their smoothies, which I know I can't get enough of. And they always have so many options to choose from, I can always be sure that everyone in my household gets the food that they love fast. Like earlier today, I had their fusilli and ground pork tomato ragu, which is one of my absolute faves, and since I didn't have to cook the whole dang thing from scratch, I was actually able to find time and sneak away to Arrakis for a bit and check out Dune Part 2, baby! Gee, I hope that Paul kid's gonna be okay. So head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use the code EXTRACREDITS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and, wait, what? Free wellness shots for life as long as you're a subscriber. Hot damn! So it is now tasty task time. Get fast and flavorful meals that you'll love here, and then once dinner is decided, check out our next savory selection right here. Say, did you hear the one about Kuya Koi, Joseph Blame, Izzy Coin, Ilkner, Dominic Valenciana, Arclight Games, Angelo Valenciana, and Ahmed Ziad Turk being legendary patrons? Yeah, turns out they're the best.
Alright guys, that is it with the murder of Sitting Bull, Native American History, Part 4, made on the Extra History YouTube channel. Yeah, that's it for Sitting Bull. Shot by Native American police. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad how after such a great victory against these colonial forces led by Custer, that victory, I think it did amount to something, but really in a holistic view, it just didn't have enough impact. It didn't have enough impact. And when Sitting Bull and his people went into exile into Canada, it just wasn't any better. It wasn't any better. The people there are also being contained in reserves, and the land has been cut up into pieces what land belongs to who. And it was just not conducive for their survival. They had no choice but to return back to the place that filled them with so much pain and suffering. And what makes it even more painful, I think, is that Sitting Bull fought for so long, for 3 decades, for his people, only for all of that to amount to entertainment for those who are colonizing North America. It has just amounted to entertainment, where these people would just gawk at him, be excited about him, but not truly appreciating who he is, where he comes from, why has he fought against the government. None of them really seem to care about that. Only that he was a native that fought against a very prominent general of the United States of America's military. That's all they know. And then, of course, they bleach the history of, this conquest and bloodletting of so many people, and the destruction of so many cultures and tribes belonging to the Native Americans. All of that has been set aside for entertainment. It's just sad. It's very, very sad. And Sitting Bull, he thought that he would still have the option for conflict against the Americans, the North America, the United States of America. He thought that they would still have an option for conflict, but once he went into those cities and he realized that the population centers of these different settlements are even 10 times larger than their own people. Numerically, there was just going to be no way for them to win against the American government. Numerically and militarily, they were going to be outnumbered. And since the Battle of Little Bighorn was concluded and the Great Plains tribes dispersed, it just made it even worse for a chance to rekindle that type of resistance against the government, because the people who were leading the charge have been arrested, have been killed, and those tribes have been further enclosed in encampments and reserves, or they've been exterminated. And some of those people have also given up the fight completely and have decided to work with the American government. So any sort of resistance that he might have thought of having or doing, he wouldn't have enough numbers on his side. I don't think so. Yeah. And the ghost dance, I think it's also a form of melancholy. It's a form of melancholy for those that they have lost, for everything that they have lost ever since the colonists arrived on that continent. And like I stated before, when it is their time to go and they reach into the afterlife, wherever that may be, I'm sure they will see their people again. I think that's the only place where you will find them. Yeah, because in the living world, they're gone. They're gone. The land is gone. The buffalo are almost gone as well. And yeah, I think you can only meet them in the afterlife. Maybe you'll be reincarnated in a different time, in a different world, and you'll be together again. But right now, no. Yeah. Alright guys, that's it. That's it with The Murder of Sitting Bull, Native American History, Part 4, made on the Extra History YouTube channel. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as the Extra History's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, give it a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys hopefully next week. Okay?